Well, hello there. How are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and check it out. I'm actually back. You probably noticed that I haven't had a chance to upload any videos over the course of the past week or so, which is definitely out of the norm for me. But I kind of ended up taking an impromptu week off of YouTube. I mean, honestly, pretty much since I started YouTube, I've been on a fairly regular schedule of every couple of days, several times a week, getting a video out, discussing all the goings-on and all the nonsense happening with gaming and whatnot. And I just really haven't had that fire to make a video all week, so I kind of took the week off. And it's been nice. It's been relaxing. I'm obviously still very busy with work and music and, just life and stuff, but not worrying about making videos because I wasn't really motivated to make a video was a bit refreshing, I can't lie. However, I've got some time to make a video and an update, and there's a pretty interesting story from the last week that I do want to discuss, and so I kind of felt like today was the day to do it. So what we're talking about here on this Sunday is news that I am very late to. Like I said, this is definitely a week or so old at this point, which in the world of YouTube gaming news discussion is borderline ancient, but it's a big deal and I wanted to discuss it. And it has to do with the update from Nintendo about the possibility of a Nintendo Switch Pro, at least the possibility of a Nintendo Switch Pro releasing in 2020. That is the key factor here, and many other people who've discussed it have brought that up. And like I said, because I'm so many days late to the story, I'm sure a lot of you guys have already seen plenty of other YouTubers kind of break down what's going on and share their thoughts. And so now it's my turn. Basically what happened was Nintendo recently had their financial briefing where they were speaking with their investors. And in this briefing, in this meeting, one of the things they discussed was the potential for, quote, new Nintendo Switch model hardware, which was very interesting because they essentially kind of shoot down the concept of a Nintendo Switch Pro. So there was a quote that was making the rounds when this story got out a couple of days ago, and this is essentially what they say. Regarding Nintendo Switch, we believe that it is important to continue to communicate the appeal of both Nintendo Switch systems and expand the installed base. Please note that we have no plans to launch a new Nintendo Switch model during 2020. Now that pretty much is the news, and that pretty much shoots down the concept of a Nintendo Switch Pro releasing in 2020. And it really is worth noting that Furukawa says that there are no plans to not launch a new Nintendo Switch model, which is interesting because that could mean anything. They're basically saying any hardware that you would call Nintendo Switch is not going to have a release in 2020. And so that could mean Nintendo Switch Pro or anything else that isn't a Pro, even a Switch 2 or a weird, 3D version of a Switch Lite or whatever they wanted to do. They're not going to do anything that's a Nintendo Switch. But of course, they also say during 2020. And so the big conversation here has been about the fact that, hey, maybe they still might be doing something next year in 2021. Something that's, of course, worth noting is that when Nintendo was going to release their Nintendo 2DS, I think, or maybe it was the 2DS XL, they said right before they released whatever this iteration of the 3DS was, that they weren't going to be releasing a new model of the 3DS. And then it turned out that they actually were, because literally right after they said that they weren't going to, they ended up doing it. It was a situation from a couple of years ago that many people have brought up here. Nintendo might be lying. Nintendo's lied in the past. Or maybe they're not being completely truthful and they're omitting some of the details. And maybe they just mean during part of 2020. And maybe they mean that later in 2020 they could do it. Or they're going to change their mind at E3 and end up announcing a Nintendo Switch Pro at E3. Or at the end of the year. Or whatever the case. I mean, one of the X factors in this whole situation is the fact that we had been hearing rumors and discussions about a Nintendo Switch Mini for so long, and it ended up being true. And now we've been waiting for the Nintendo Switch Pro. There's been plenty of theories and predictions, and even behind-the-scenes information and rumors getting out there about a Nintendo Switch Pro. And then Nintendo comes out and tells everyone that they're not going to do it. So the information is all over the place. It feels like it's attacking us from all sides, and it's true, it's not true. They're lying, they're not lying. They lied in the past, but they're always truthful in the future. And so what are they going to do? No one really knows. And it's just so interesting that they decided to do this. Another important thing here is the fact that this conversation, these quotes were said to their investors in a financial briefing. This wasn't a situation where Nintendo or Furukawa were talking to the media, to a video games journalism outlet, to a YouTuber, or to, a TV broadcast or whatever. They weren't talking to anyone like that. They were talking to the people who need to understand their business so they know what they're investing in, if they're getting the proper value for their dollar, and if they want to stay on as an investor or sell and get out of Dodge when it comes to Nintendo stock. And so Nintendo would absolutely have nothing to gain from lying to those people, from lying to their investors. In fact, it would be the worst thing that they can do. In a situation like this, if they did have a Nintendo Switch Pro or a new model of the Switch that they planned on releasing in 2020, they either wouldn't say anything about it if they didn't want to get it out there, or they would tell their investors that they're doing it because by releasing a new product and new hardware and something that could drive a lot of business and revenue, they want their investors to know this because it means their stock and their business becomes more valuable. So people want to A, continue to stay invested in Nintendo, and B, potentially invest even more, because if a Switch Pro releases and Nintendo becomes more successful, then those who are investing get more money back. So again, if they were doing something this year, Nintendo would only have something to gain by telling them that they're doing it. If they're not doing it, but they were lying about it, they would tell them something different. And so it just doesn't add up to think that they're lying here, even though a lot of people think that they are. And I mean, how many times do I say this with Nintendo? Maybe this is the one time where they are lying. They're lying to us and they're lying to their investors. Maybe this is a weird one-off where they think it's a smart business plan to lie to those people in a financial investors briefing. Who knows? But I think that if you really step back from the situation and look at it and you think about it logically with your brain, they're not lying. They're being truthful. I think that it's pretty safe to take Furukawa at his word and this statement at face value that there is no new Switch model in 2020. We're not going to see a Nintendo Switch Pro now. Now, what are my thoughts on this whole thing beyond just the recap of events that I kind of just spent several minutes blabbing to you guys about? How do I feel just about the concept of a Nintendo Switch Pro? If I want it or if I don't, what it could mean for Nintendo, and the fact that apparently we're not going to be seeing one in 2020. I mean, obviously I've talked about this before. 2019 was filled with conversations about both the Switch Mini and the Switch Pro. And now that the Switch Mini is out as the Switch Lite, we're on to the Pro thing. And I mean, a Switch Pro to me is definitely and has always been more appealing to me by far compared to the Nintendo Switch Lite or Nintendo Switch Mini. And, the Lite product that we got that really pulled away most of the features and things that I actually care about when it comes to my Nintendo Switch and Nintendo gaming, I have no interest in that. But the idea of a Pro that comes out and adds things to the Switch as opposed to taking away from it like the Lite does, at the end of the day, of course that's more exciting to me. Something that could have potentially better frame rates, better graphics, better resolution, maybe even a library of games that could only run on newer upgraded Pro hardware, something like that. Yeah, it has some appeal to me. It does seem kind of interesting, and it's very likely something I would probably buy. However, it also needs to be noted that it's not something that I need. I have never needed any upgrade or change to the Switch as it stands. This device, this launch day Nintendo Switch that I have, the same Switch we're all playing on, it's great. It's amazing. That's why it sells so well. It's a wonderful piece of hardware. It works fantastically docked or in portable. The library is out of this world. Nintendo has been killing it, and we know that we've got still some games and some surprises left to go. I mean, without the need for extra power and graphics and whatever, the Switch has been amazing. Now, beyond that, when we factor in the fact that Nintendo is telling us that they're not releasing a Switch Pro in 2020, and as I've said here, I believe them. I don't think we're going to see an upgraded Switch this year. We then start to wonder, what do they do in the future? What does 2021 and beyond hold? What does it hold for the Nintendo Switch Pro concept? And what does it hold for anything else Nintendo might do? Well, a lot of you guys have been following me for a while, and especially throughout last year in 2019, and I've kind of shared my semi-long-term predictions for Nintendo in the past, and I still believe those same predictions, and they factor in here. You've heard me say that I think we're probably closer to a Nintendo Switch 2 or a successor machine than a lot of people might believe. Just a personal opinion, just a theory and a guess, something I could be wrong on, not anything I'm basing any behind the scenes information on, okay? So it's literally just Rob's guess, Rob's prediction. I think in the next couple of years, we're probably going to move on from the Switch. Not because the Switch is bad, but just because it will be time to do so. We've got incoming hardware from Sony and Microsoft, and no matter what anyone thinks, it does matter. Nintendo's going to pay attention to it. Even if they're 2 years behind, they're going to eventually have to respond to it in some way, shape, or form. Not to mention the fact that their next machine doesn't have to necessarily be a Switch 2. It could be a home console, it could be a handheld exclusively, whatever it is. Nintendo's working on their next generation hardware. Not a Switch Pro, not an upgrade to this. I'm talking about a next generation leap for Nintendo in their hardware business. Something that is like 2 to 3 times as powerful as this Switch right here. And I think that that's coming around the 2022-ish mark. Maybe 2023, but I think that, if anything, by 2022, I think we're going to be hearing stuff about the fact that Nintendo's got next generation hardware coming. And so, per my theory, if my theory is correct, which it might not be, but let's pretend for the sake of argument in this conversation that it is correct, in 2022 or 23 we're going to see something new, then suddenly, by the time 2021 comes around, does it make sense for Nintendo to release a Nintendo Switch Pro? I mean, it's not impossible for them to do so, but I think it becomes less likely, and I think that there becomes less of a need to do it. Because why not just have us wait for the next big thing? Why put your time and money and resources into all of the R&D, all of the manufacturing, and then all of the marketing of a Switch Pro just for 1 year before having to market the next generation? I just feel like a Nintendo Switch Pro in 2020 makes so much sense, and that if it's not happening in 2020 like they're telling us, that the ideas then start to conflict with each other. And a Switch Pro in 2021, to me, conflicts with my theory of a successor machine in 2022. It just doesn't really add up to me, and I just wonder if it would be smart for Nintendo to do it. Now, some people have talked about, they made the Xbox One X, recently, and they're already moving on to the next thing, and same with the PS4 Pro, and so they released those kind of close to each other, and it's like, yeah, kind of, but also, did they really? When did those come out? I want to say 2018 or maybe even 2017? By the time the end of 2020 rolls around, it will have been 2-3 years or so since those machines launched. And so that's why, my theory being 2022, maybe for Nintendo's next-gen hardware, means that a 2020 release for a Switch Pro is probably fine. But again, a 2021, I don't think makes as much sense. It's possible, but I think it makes less sense. And so I just start to think we should wait for the next generation, if that's true. Now, if Nintendo comes out soon and says, we're not releasing our next generation hardware until 2025 or beyond, then it's a different story, okay? If Nintendo gives us a reason to believe the window for their next gen is farther off than my theory, then it's a whole different ballgame, and I think that there is a very good chance we end up seeing a Switch Pro in 2021 or 22 or whatever. So we're just going to have to wait and see. I have my theory of that 22 and 23 target for the next gen machine, but it could be wrong, okay? I'm not here telling you I know the facts and it's going to be right because I'm so great at predicting things. I have like a 50-50 track record on predictions. But it's just what I believe. It's what I feel right now. It's what my gut is telling me. And I'm going to believe it until some information comes out to either change my mind or to even confirm that what I'm thinking is correct. And it just all, to me, changes what's happening with the idea of a Switch Pro now that Nintendo told us it's not happening this year. So, as with all of my conversations and discussions on news and updates, it will be interesting to see what happens, right? I mean, who knows what's going on? Is Nintendo going to have ended up lying to us? I mean, it would be crazy if we end up seeing a Switch Pro this year and we'll all call back to this time and be like, man, Nintendo lied again. They lied about something and then they turned right around and did the thing that they lied about. Like, it'll be crazy if that happens. But I'm just going to remind you at the end here, I don't expect that. I'm taking them at their word. We're not seeing a Switch Pro this year. We're not seeing any new hardware from Nintendo this year. So let's just enjoy the games. I'm sure we have plenty of game surprises to look forward to this year, and that's what we should care about more than the hardware at this point, right? Is the games. We're only just right now coming up on the 3-year anniversary of the Switch. I think it's only, halfway-ish through its life, maybe a little past halfway through its life. So we've still got a whole year ahead of us of games to play on the Switch, and even next year, and You know, Breath of the Wild 2 is coming, Metroid Prime 4 is coming, like Bayonetta 3 is a mystery. These are all games that we're going to be playing sometime in the next year or 2 or 3 years. So I think that should be the focus for now. If we get the surprise Switch Pro thing, we'll just deal with it and be excited for it at that time. That's really the best that we can do. So what have you guys thought about this? I know that I'm, like I said, a week late here, but I still want to hear what you think about the Switch Pro, what Nintendo said about it not happening this year. How do you think it fits into, like, my theory of their next generation machine and what happens in 2021? All that good stuff. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.